The massive crystal chamber stretched far above General Vexvara's head. The ceiling disappeared into darkness so high that even his enhanced eyes could not see the top. Light from 3 different colored suns poured through the clear walls. The red sun cast angry shadows. The blue sun made everything look cold. The yellow sun tried to warm the room, but failed. Together, they made rainbow patterns dance across the smooth black floor. The general stood alone in the center of a perfect circle carved into the stone. His forearms hung at his sides like broken branches. His dark green scales showed deep scars from many battles fought across the galaxy. Some scars were from energy weapons. Others were from claws and teeth. A few were from explosions that had nearly killed him. But today, those old wounds seemed small compared to the shame he carried in his heart. Around him, 12 giant seats rose like mountains. Each seat was made from materials from different homeworlds. Each seat was designed for a different type of alien body. Each seat held a member of the Galactic Council, the most powerful beings in known space. The Valkyrie looked like tall birds with silver feathers that caught the light. Their eyes were sharp and intelligent. They could see across vast distances and notice the smallest details. The Chromac were made of living rock that glowed red from the heat inside their bodies. They were older than most stars and stronger than mountains. The Zephyrians floated in glass tanks filled with blue gas that they breathed instead of air. Their thoughts moved faster than computers, Dog. There were others, too. The Nethrix looked like shadows given form. The Stellari glowed with their own inner light. The Vorthan had tentacles instead of arms. The Kexmari had 3 heads that often argued with each other. All of them had one thing in common. All of them stared down at Vexvara with cold, angry eyes. "Begin your report, General," said High Chancellor Vextari. Her voice echoed in the huge room like thunder rolling across mountains. She was the leader of the Valkyrie, and her silver feathers shook with barely controlled anger. Each feather was as sharp as a blade. "Tell us how the greatest fleet in galactic history was destroyed. Tell us how you lost everything we gave you." Vexvara's throat felt dry as desert sand. His 4 hearts were beating too fast. Sweat dripped from his scales onto the black floor. He had fought in 100 battles across 50 star systems. He had conquered entire worlds. He had made enemy fleets run away just by showing his flag. But standing here, telling this story, was the hardest thing he had ever done. "Honored Council," he began, his voice cracking like an old man's. "What I am about to tell you will sound impossible. You will think I am lying. You will think I have gone mad from defeat. You will think the humans broke my mind. But every word I speak is true. Every detail I remember happened exactly as I will tell you." The council members leaned forward in their great seats. Some made angry sounds deep in their throats. Others stayed silent and still like statues. The Chromac general's rock body glowed brighter with rage. The Zephyrians blew. Gas bubbled faster in their tanks. The shadow-like Nethrix became even darker. "Speak quickly," rumbled General Korath of the Chromac. His voice sounded like boulders falling down a mountain. His rock body glowed brighter with each word. Ancient runes carved into his stone skin began to glow. "We have heard the numbers. 2,847 ships lost. Only 29 returned. Most of those were damaged beyond repair. Explain this disaster. Explain how you failed us all." Vexvara closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he could still see the human ships moving like dancers through the darkness of space. He could still hear their calm, confident voices as they destroyed everything he had built. He could still feel the moment when he realized that everything he knew about war was wrong. "It started 6 months ago," he said slowly. "The council gave me the greatest honor any military commander could receive. I was chosen to lead the invasion of Sol System. The humans had been found. They were new to space. They were weak. They would be easy to defeat, or so we all believed." He paused and looked around the chamber. Every eye was on him. Every alien. Mine was focused on his words. The weight of their attention felt heavier than gravity. We gathered ships from every world in the hegemony, he continued. The Valkyrie gave their best warbirds, ships that could fly faster than light and strike like lightning. The Chromox sent their mountain breaker ships, vessels made from the hearts of dead planets, powered by the heat of creation itself. The Zephyrians brought their storm cruisers, ships that could control weather and make hurricanes in space. His voice grew stronger as he remembered the pride he had felt 6 months ago. Even the Nethrix gave us their ghost fleet, ships that could become invisible and appear anywhere. The Stellari sent their Lightbringers. The Vorthan gave their mine ships that could think faster than their crews. Every species contributed their finest vessels and their best warriors. The Xvaras, 4 arms spread wide as he described the magnificent armada. My flagship, the Star Crusher, was 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. It had guns that could break planets into pieces, shields that could stop the energy of stars, armor made from metals that existed only in the cores of neutron stars. We had ships that could bend space itself like folding paper. We had weapons that could turn stars into bombs. We had technology that most species only dreamed about. He turned in a slow circle, looking at each council member. No force in the galaxy had ever seen such power. No enemy had ever faced such overwhelming strength. We had enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. We had enough ships to blockade entire star systems. We had enough warriors to conquer half the galaxy? Yes, yes, interrupted Counselor Thane of the Zephyrians. His voice bubbled through his gas tank like water boiling. The blue gas around him swirled faster, showing his impatience. We know what we gave you. We remember every ship, every weapon, every warrior. We gave you everything you asked for and more. Tell us how you lost it all. Tell us how the mighty Vexvara was defeated by primitives. The words hit the general like physical blows. His scales darkened with shame. His forehands clenched into fists, so tight that his claws cut into his palms. The intelligence report said the humans were primitives, he said through gritted teeth. They had only been in space for 200 years. Most species take 1,000 years just to leave their home systems. Their fastest ships moved slower than our cargo vessels. Our supply ships could outrun their best warships. Their weapons were simple kinetic rounds and basic energy beams, technology that most species abandon after their first century in space. He started pacing in a small circle, his forearms moving as he talked. Each step echoed in the vast chamber. Their largest ship was only 1 kilometer long. Our smallest destroyers were bigger than their flagships. They had no weapons that could even scratch our armor. No shields that could stop our plasma cannons. No experience fighting real space wars. They had only fought each other on their own world. Vexvara stopped pacing and faced the council directly. The report said they had no allies, no advanced technology, no knowledge of galactic politics. They were isolated, alone, and helpless. Perfect prey for a quick conquest. That matches our information exactly, said Chancellor Vexthari. Her feathers rustled like sharp wind through metal. Simple creatures with simple technology and simple minds? So what went wrong? How did such weak beings defeat you? The general's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The great chamber became so quiet that everyone could hear his breathing. Everything we knew about them was true. Every fact in our reports was correct. Every measurement was accurate. And everything we knew about them was completely, utterly, impossibly wrong. The council chamber fell silent except for the humming of machinery and the bubbling of the Zephyrian gas tanks. The rainbow light from the 3 suns seemed to dim as if the stars themselves were listening. I led the greatest armada ever assembled to their star system. Vexvara continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. We jumped in at the edge of their space in perfect formation. 2,847 ships appearing like thunder from hyperspace. Our sensors immediately began scanning everything in the system. He closed his eyes, remembering that moment of confidence. Our sensors showed exactly what we expected. A few hundred small ships scattered around their inner planets. Primitive. Space stations that looked like metal toys. Some orbital defenses around their homeworld, but nothing that could threaten even our smallest escort ships. No massive defense platforms. No hidden fleets waiting in ambush, no signs of advanced technology. The general opened his eyes and looked directly at Chancellor Vexthari. I was so confident that I decided to be generous. I opened a communication. Channel to their homeworld. I told them who I was. I told them why we had come. I gave them the standard surrender demand. I told them to submit or be destroyed. I even gave them 1 full hour to make their decision. Generous indeed, said General Korath, his rock body glowing with sarcasm. And they refused to surrender? No, said Dexvara, and now his voice carried a strange note. Something between amazement and terror. They did not refuse. They did something that no species in galactic history has ever done when faced with overwhelming force. General Dexvara took a deep breath and continued his story. The council members leaned forward, their alien faces showing mixtures of curiosity and growing concern. The rainbow lights from the 3 suns seemed to grow brighter, as if the stars themselves wanted to hear what came next. The journey to the human system took 3 weeks, the general said. 3 weeks of perfect confidence. 3 weeks of planning victory celebrations. 3 weeks of believing we were about to achieve the easiest conquest in galactic history. His forearms moved as he described the magnificent fleet. Every day I walked through the command decks of my flagship. I visited the other ships through transport shuttles. Everywhere I looked, I saw the finest warriors in the galaxy preparing for battle. Valkyrie pilots sharpening their reflexes. Chromac gunners testing their targeting systems. Zephyrian tacticians running battle simulations. Dexvara's voice grew stronger as he remembered his pride. The Star Crusher was a floating city of war. 3 kilometers of armor, weapons, and warrior spirit. My command bridge was larger than most space stations. My tactical displays could track 10,000 targets at once. My weapons could crack planets like eggs. He paused and looked around the council chamber. But my flagship was just one ship, among thousands. The Valkyrie warbirds flew in perfect formations that looked like silver clouds. The Chromac mountain breakers moved like floating mountains made of metal and stone. The Zephyrian storm cruisers sparked with captured lightning. General Korath's rock body glowed with remembered pride. The mountain breakers were my finest gift to your armada. Ships carved from the hearts of dead worlds. They were magnificent, Dexvara agreed. Every ship in the fleet was a masterpiece of military engineering. We had vessels that could survive flying through stars. We had weapons that could reach across entire star systems. We had shields that could stop anything the galaxy could throw at us. The general's voice became more animated as he described their approach to the human system. When we finally reached the edge of their space, I gave the order to drop out of hyperspace. 2,847 ships appeared in perfect battle formation. The sight was breathtaking. A wall of metal and firepower stretching across thousands of kilometers. His scales brightened slightly with the memory. My sensor officers immediately began scanning the human system. What they found matched our intelligence. Reports exactly, a single star with 9 planets. The 3rd planet was their homeworld, covered in blue oceans and green land. A few small space stations in orbit. Maybe 300 ships scattered around the inner planets. Dexvara began pacing as he continued. Their largest ship was less than 1 kilometer long. Most of their vessels were smaller than our fighter craft. Their space stations looked like children's toys compared to our battle platforms. Their orbital defenses were so primitive that our sensors almost missed them completely. Councillor Thane's blue gas bubbled with amusement. Primitive indeed. What was their response to your arrival? The general's expression became more serious. That was when something unexpected happened. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, we received a communication request from their homeworld. A calm professional message asking for a few minutes to establish proper diplomatic contact. His voice changed as he quoted the human transmission. Unknown fleet, this is Earth traffic control. We have detected your arrival at the edge of our system. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. We are prepared to establish communication protocols for peaceful first contact. Vexvara stopped pacing and faced the council. Earth. Traffic control. They spoke to the greatest military armada in galactic history like we were merchant ships requesting landing permission. There was no fear in their voices, no panic. No desperate calls for help to allies who could not reach them in time. High Chancellor Vex Stories' feathers rustled with confusion. They thought it was a peaceful contact? Did they not recognize a military fleet? Oh, they knew exactly what we were, the general replied. I decided to enlighten them immediately. I opened a communication channel using maximum power transmission. My voice reached every human ship and space station in their system. His voice became deeper and more commanding as he recreated his words. This is General Vexvara, of the Galactic Hegemony Defense Fleet. You will surrender your system immediately and submit to Hegemony Authority. You have 1 hour to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species and your world. The general paused and shook his head. I expected immediate panic, desperate pleas for mercy. Perhaps some futile attempt to negotiate for more time. What I received instead was something that should have warned me about the danger we were in. His voice became quieter and more thoughtful. The response came from a human female named Captain Yuna. She was speaking from a ship called the Soul's Pride, a vessel so small it could have fit inside one of our shuttle bays, but her voice was completely calm and professional. Vexvara's voice changed again as he quoted her words. General Vexvara, this is Captain Yuna of the Earth Defense Coordination. We acknowledge your message and understand your intentions. However, we cannot comply with your demands. Earth and our system are under our protection, and we will defend them. The council members looked at each other with amazement. Several made sounds of disbelief. She refused? Asked General Korath. A primitive in a tiny ship refused the surrender. Demand of nearly 3,000 warships? Not just refused, Vexvara said. She made a counterproposal that I found both amusing and insulting. She continued speaking, and her words became even more incredible. The general's voice carried a note of remembered astonishment. General, we understand you have superior numbers and firepower. We respect the courage of your warriors and the power of your fleet. However, we ask for 5 minutes to prepare our defensive positions. After that, if you still choose to attack, we will be ready to respond appropriately. Vexvara spread his 4 arms wide. 5 minutes. This human captain was asking for 5 minutes to prepare defenses against the greatest military force ever assembled. It was like a single soldier asking for time to prepare before fighting an entire army. Councillor Thane's gas swirled faster. What did you do? Surely you attacked immediately to punish such insolence? I should have, the general admitted. Every military instinct told me to begin the attack immediately, but I was curious, and I was amused. I wanted to see what these primitive humans thought they could accomplish in 5 minutes against overwhelming odds. His voice carried a note of bitter regret. So I made the decision that doomed my entire fleet. I granted their request. I opened the communication channel and spoke to the entire human system. Vexvara's voice became formal as he recreated his words. Captain Yuna, your request is both foolish and pointless. But I am feeling generous today. You have 5 minutes to prepare whatever pathetic defenses you think might help you. Use them wisely, because they will be your last 5 minutes of life. The general's scales darkened with shame. I thought I was being magnanimous. I thought I was showing mercy to primitives who did not understand the hopelessness of their situation. I ordered my fleet to hold position and observe while the humans scrambled uselessly to prepare for their doom. His voice became more intense. Captain Yuna's response should have warned me. Her voice remained completely calm as she thanked me for the time. Thank you, General. 5 minutes will be sufficient. We appreciate your courtesy and hope that, after this is over, our species might find ways to coexist peacefully. Vexvara looked up at the council with eyes full of painful memory. coexist peacefully. Even facing annihilation, she was thinking about the future, about peace, about building something better than war. I should have recognized that anyone thinking about peace while facing overwhelming force had very good reasons for their confidence. The general began pacing again, his movements more agitated. I spent those 5 minutes watching my tactical displays and feeling amused. My sensor officers tracked the movement of human ships as they scattered across their system. My tactical computers analyzed their pathetic attempts at defensive positioning. My weapons officers prepared targeting solutions for the quick massacre I expected to follow. His voice became darker. I even allowed myself a moment of philosophical reflection. I thought about how this conquest would be remembered in galactic history. The day the great General Vexvara brought another primitive species into the enlightened embrace of the hegemony. Vexvara stopped pacing and faced the council directly. I was so confident that I decided to make the battle into a teaching moment. I opened communications with my fleet commanders to discuss the tactical lessons my junior officers could learn from observing the destruction of the human defenses. The general's voice cracked slightly. Admiral Krekstar of the Valkyrie Warbird suggested we record the battle for training purposes. General Morton of the Chromac Mountain Breakers recommended we preserve some human ships as examples of primitive technology. Commander Zephylis of the Storm Cruisers proposed studying human tactical doctrine to understand how not to organize space defenses. His 4 hands clenched into fists. General Vexvara's voice became quieter as he continued his story. The council members leaned forward to catch every word. The rainbow lights from the 3 suns seemed to flicker with anticipation. When Captain Yuna asked for those 5 minutes, I thought I would watch the humans panic, the general said. I expected to see their ships running around like scared animals. I expected desperate radio calls between their vessels. I expected chaos and fear. He paused and shook his head slowly. Instead, I watched something that made no sense at all. The human ships began to move, but not in any pattern we recognized. They scattered across their entire star system like seeds thrown by the wind. Some ships dove toward their sun at dangerous speeds. Others moved toward the giant gas planets on the edge of their system. Small vessels disappeared behind asteroids and moons. Councillor Thane's blue gas bubbled faster in his tank. They were running away? Abandoning their homeworld? That is what we thought at first, Vexvara replied. But they were not running. They were moving with purpose. Every ship went to a specific location. Every movement was planned. But the pattern made no tactical sense according to everything we knew about space warfare. The general began pacing again, his 4 arms moving as he remembered. Our best military computers tried to understand what they were doing. The Valkyrie battle minds analyzed their movements. The Chromac war thinkers studied their positions. The Zephyrian tactical clouds ran millions of scenarios. Every analysis came back with the same result. He stopped and looked directly at the council. Complete confusion. No known military doctrine could explain their actions. They were putting their ships in positions where they would be separated and vulnerable. They were dividing their small force against our massive fleet. By every rule of warfare, they were making the worst possible choices. High Chancellor Vextharia's silver feathers rustled with impatience. You said they asked for 5 minutes. What happened when that time was up? Vexvara's scales darkened with memory. I was still confident, even amused. Their strange movements just proved they were primitives who did not understand real military strategy. I opened communications with my fleet commanders. Admiral Krekstar of the Valkyrie Warbirds, General Morton of the Chromac Mountain Breakers, Commander Zephylis of the Storm Cruisers. His voice grew stronger as he remembered giving orders. I told them to advance in standard conquest formation. The dreadnoughts and battleships would move toward their homeworld. The cruisers would hunt down the scattered human ships. The destroyers would eliminate their space stations. It would be quick and easy. The general's 4 hands clenched as the memory became painful. My fleet began moving inward from the edge of their system. 2,800 ships advancing like a wall of metal and death. Our engines left trails of light across space. Our weapons powered up and locked onto targets. Our shields activated to maximum strength. He paused and took a deep breath. That was when a new voice came over the communication channels. A human male named Commander Minho. He was speaking from a ship near their fourth planet. His voice was as calm as Captain Yuna's had been. Vexvara's voice changed as he quoted the human's words. "This is Commander Minho of the Earth Defense Force. All ships report status." And then, one by one, human voices began responding from across their entire star system. The general's eyes grew wide as he remembered. Captain Seojun in position? Near Luna. Gravitational calculations complete. Lieutenant Jisu at Jupiter Station. Magnetic field readings confirmed. Commander Taeyan in the asteroid field. Trajectory plots locked in. Captain Minji near the sun. Solar wind analysis finished. Counselor Thane interrupted. What were they talking about? Gravitational calculations. Magnetic fields? This sounds like science, not warfare. That is exactly what I thought, Vexvara said. My tactical officers were confused. These humans were talking like scientists, not soldiers. They were discussing mathematics and physics while a massive fleet approached to destroy them. The general's voice became more intense. Then Commander Minho spoke again. All defensive positions confirmed. Physics models verified. Environmental factors calculated. Initiating Protocol Phoenix in 10 seconds. He stopped pacing and stood perfectly still. Protocol Phoenix, I will never forget those words. In 10 seconds, everything I knew about space warfare was about to become useless. General Korath's rockbody glowed brighter. What happened next? Vexvara's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The human ships began to move, but they did not move like any ships we had ever seen. The vessels that had fled toward their sun suddenly changed direction. They used the star's gravity to slingshot around it, gaining speed that should have been impossible for ships of their size. His voice grew louder with amazement. The ships near the gas giant Jupiter began moving in perfect formation. They were using the planet's massive magnetic field to charge their weapons. Ships hiding behind asteroids emerged with momentum that defied our understanding of physics. The general turned to face the council directly. But the strangest thing was how they moved together. Ships separated by millions of kilometers were acting like parts of a single organism. They were sharing information instantly across impossible distances. They were coordinating their movements with precision that our best computers could not match. He paused and shook his head in wonder. A human scientist named Dr. Jisu began broadcasting from a research station near Jupiter. Her voice was calm and educational, like a teacher explaining a lesson to children. Vexvara's voice changed again as he quoted her words. Attention, unknown fleet. Welcome to our star system. You are about to witness something new. We have learned that in war, the environment is your greatest ally. Every planet, every moon, every gravitational field becomes a weapon when you understand the mathematics. The council chamber was completely silent except for the humming of machinery. I still did not understand, the general continued. I thought they were just talking, making speeches before they died. I ordered my fleet to continue the advance. I told my commanders to ignore the human chatter and focus on destroying their ships. His voice became darker. That was my greatest mistake. I should have listened. I should have tried to understand. Because Dr. Jisu was not making speeches. She was giving us a warning. She was explaining what was about to happen to us. Vexvara looked up at the council with eyes full of regret. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Not just their ships. Not just their space stations, everything, the sun, the planets, the moons, the asteroid fields. Even empty space itself had become part of their defense. He spread his forearms wide. And we were flying straight into a trap that was as large as their entire solar system. General Vexvara's voice began to shake as he reached the most painful part of his story. His forehands trembled, and his dark scales seemed to grow even darker. The council members watched him with growing horror as they began to understand the scope of the disaster. My fleet was still advancing toward their homeworld, the general continued. Our ships were spread across space in perfect battle formation. The dreadnoughts led the way with their massive guns charged and ready. Behind them came the battleships and cruisers. Smaller vessels protected our flanks. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I was standing on the bridge of the Star Crusher, feeling confident. My tactical display showed our overwhelming advantage. 2,800 ships against a few hundred human vessels. Our smallest destroyer had more firepower than their largest ship. Victory seemed certain. Nexvara opened his eyes and looked directly at High Chancellor Vextari. That was when the humans began their physics lesson. Dr. Jasu's voice came over the communication channels again. She was still speaking like a teacher, calm and patient, but now she was explaining things that made my blood run cold. The general's voice changed as he quoted the human scientist. You see, we've learned something important about warfare in space. Traditional thinking focuses on ships fighting other ships, but space is not empty. It is full of energy, gravity, magnetic fields, and moving objects. A smart fighter does not ignore these tools. Counselor Thane's blue gas swirled faster. What? Did she mean, what tools? I was about to learn, Dexvara replied grimly. Dr. Jasu continued her explanation. Every planet has gravity that can be used to change speed and direction. Every star has solar wind that can push objects across vast distances. Every gas giant has magnetic fields that can charge weapons. Beyond their normal limits, the general began pacing again, his movements more agitated now. As she spoke, I watched the human ships begin to demonstrate her words. The vessels that had gone toward their sun suddenly came racing back. But they were not using their engines. They were riding the solar wind like boats sailing on an ocean. His voice filled with amazement and fear. These ships were moving 3 times faster than their engines should have allowed. They had used their star's own energy to accelerate beyond anything we thought possible, and they were coming straight toward my advanced squadrons. General Korath leaned forward in his stone seat. Impossible. No ship can survive that close to a star. That is what we thought too, Dexvara said. But the humans had learned to use their star's gravity and solar wind without getting too close to the dangerous heat. They had calculated perfect trajectories that gave them enormous speed while keeping them safe. The general's voice grew more intense. At the same time, the ships near Jupiter began their own demonstration. Commander Seojin's voice came over the channels. He explained that Jupiter's magnetic field was 10,000 times stronger than their homeworlds. Ships flying through that field could charge their weapons to incredible levels. Vexvara stopped pacing and faced the council. I watched as human ships smaller than our fighters began firing weapons that glowed brighter than small suns. Energy. Beams that should have been impossible from vessels their size. They had turned Jupiter into a massive charging station for their entire fleet, his 4 hands clenched into fists. But that was not the worst part. Captain Taeyun began broadcasting from the asteroid field between their 4th and 5th planets. He was explaining how they had spent months calculating the exact position and velocity of every large rock in that field. The general's voice dropped to a whisper. They were not just hiding behind asteroids. They were using them as weapons. Ships would push asteroids with careful precision, sending house-sized rocks flying toward our fleet at incredible speeds. But these were not random attacks. He looked up at the council with eyes full of horrified respect. Every asteroid was aimed perfectly. The humans had calculated how our ships would move. They knew where we would be before we knew it ourselves. Rocks the size of buildings began appearing in the exact spots where our ships were heading. Counselor Thane made a bubbling sound of disbelief. They were throwing rocks at you? Rocks moving at thousands of kilometers per hour, Dexvara corrected. Rocks guided by perfect mathematics. Rocks that hit with the force of nuclear weapons. And we could not stop them because we did not see them coming until it was too late. The general's voice became filled with a strange admiration. But the most incredible demonstration came from Captain Minji. Her ships were near their homeworld's moon. She began explaining something called gravitational wave manipulation. I had never heard these words before. He paused and shook his head in wonder. She said their species had learned to use gravity itself as a weapon, not just to change direction or gain speed, but to bend space around their ships, to make distance longer or shorter, to appear in multiple places at once. High Chancellor Vexthari's feathers stood up straight. That is theoretically impossible. No species has ever mastered gravity manipulation. I said the same thing, Vexvara replied. My science officers insisted it could not be done. Our most advanced computers said the mathematics were impossible. But then Captain Minji's ships began to demonstrate. The general's voice filled with awe and terror. I watched human vessels disappear from one location and appear instantly in another. Not faster than light travel, not teleportation. They were folding space itself like paper. Distance became meaningless for them. He began pacing faster now. Ships that should have been hours away from our fleet suddenly appeared right next to our largest dreadnoughts. Human vessels no bigger than our fighters were attacking battleships from impossible angles. They would appear, fire, and vanish before our weapons could target them. Vexvara stopped and looked directly at General Korath. Your mountain breaker ships were the first to fall. The humans appeared inside your formation. They fired at point-blank range with weapons charged by Jupiter's magnetic field. 3 Chromach dreadnoughts were destroyed before they could even return fire. General Korath's rock body glowed bright red with rage. The mountain breakers were unsinkable. They had armor made from neutron star cores. Armor means nothing when the enemy appears inside your shields, Vexvara said quietly. The humans had learned to use space itself as their ally. They could ignore distance, ignore obstacles, ignore every defensive advantage we thought we had. The general's voice became softer but more frightening. And through it all, Dr. Jasu kept explaining, like a teacher showing students a science experiment. She talked about orbital mechanics, gravitational fields, magnetic resonance, and solar wind dynamics. She was giving us a lecture on physics while her people destroyed our fleet. He spread his forearms wide. I finally understood what she meant when she said the environment was their greatest ally. They had not just built ships and weapons. They had learned to use the laws of physics themselves as tools of war. Vexvara's voice rose to a shout. They turned mathematics into artillery. They made gravity into a sword. They used their own star as a cannon. They transformed their entire solar system into the most powerful weapon any species has ever created. The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of the general's heavy breathing. Finally he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. And we were flying straight into the middle of it, thinking we were the hunters when we were actually the prey. General Vexvara's voice cracked as he reached the most devastating part of his confession. His 4 hands shook so badly that he had to clasp them together to keep them still. The council members sat in complete silence, afraid to interrupt the terrible story they were hearing. The real battle began when Admiral Hyunwoo spoke from Earth's orbital command station, the general said. His voice was different from the others. Not like a teacher or a scientist. He spoke like a conductor preparing to lead an orchestra. Vexvara's voice changed as he quoted the human commander. All units, this is Admiral Hyunwoo. The enemy fleet has entered our operational zone. All defensive calculations are complete. All environmental factors are locked in. All units prepare to demonstrate why Earth is protected. The general's scales darkened further. I still did not understand the full danger we were in. Yes, they had shown us some clever tricks with gravity and magnetic fields. But we still had massive numerical superiority. We still had the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. I ordered my fleet to continue the advance and ignore their demonstrations. He paused and looked around the council chamber. That was the moment Admiral Hyunwoo gave the order that ended everything. 3 words that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Execute Protocol Phoenix. Dexvara's voice became barely audible. What happened next lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I know because my ship's computers recorded every moment until they were destroyed. 3 minutes and 47 seconds to completely obliterate the greatest military force in galactic history. The general began describing the battle, his voice growing stronger but filled with horror. It started with the ships that had slingshot around their sun. Captain Yuna led the first wave, her voice calm as she called out targets. Soul's Pride engaging Dreadnought Formation Alpha. Solar wind acceleration at maximum. All weapons charged. To full capacity, his forearms spread wide as he remembered. The small human ships came screaming out of the solar wind faster than anything should move, but they were not just fast. They were firing weapons that glowed like pieces of their star. Energy beams so bright they hurt to look at. Weapons that should have been impossible from ships their size. Dexvara's voice filled with amazement and terror. The first wave hit our leading dreadnoughts like hammers striking glass. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were cut in half by weapons charged by solar energy. In the first 30 seconds, we lost 47 capital ships. General Korath's rock body glowed brighter. 47 dreadnoughts in 30 seconds? Impossible. I have the recordings, Dexvara said quietly. I wish I did not, but I do. The humans were not fighting like any species we had ever encountered. They were fighting like the laws of physics themselves had declared war on us, the general continued his terrible account. While the solar wind ships attacked our front lines, Captain Seojan's group began their assault from Jupiter. These ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. One moment they were attacking our left flank. The next moment they were behind our command ships. They had learned to fold space like origami. His voice grew more intense. Captain Seojan himself targeted my flagship. I watched his small vessel appear directly in front of the Star Crusher. A ship 1/10 our size, facing the most powerful warship ever built. I laughed because I thought he was committing suicide. Dexvara's laughter now sounded bitter and hollow. He fired a single shot. One energy beam charged by Jupiter's magnetic field and focused through gravitational lenses. That beam went through our neutron star armor like it was made of paper. It cut through 17 decks and destroyed our main power core. The general's voice became quieter. As my flagship began to die around me, I heard Captain Seojan's voice over the communication channel. He was apologizing. Apologizing for having to fight us. He said they hoped we would learn from this and choose peace in the future. Counselor Thane's blue gas swirled frantically. He apologized while destroying your ship? While destroying our entire fleet, Dexvara corrected. Because that was when the asteroid bombardment began. Captain Taeyun had spent months calculating the perfect trajectories. House-sized rocks began appearing everywhere our ships were trying to move. The general's voice filled with reluctant admiration. But these were not random impacts. Each asteroid was aimed with mathematical precision. They hit our ship's weakest points. Engine sections, weapon systems, shield generators. The humans had studied our ship designs and knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. He began pacing again, his movements agitated. Commander Minji's gravitational manipulation ships made everything worse. They were bending space around our vessels, making our shots miss their targets while their attacks hit perfectly. Distance became meaningless. Direction became useless. Our tactical computers could not track enemies that existed in multiple locations at once. Dexvara stopped pacing and faced the council directly, but the worst part was the coordination. Every human ship worked together like fingers on a hand. They shared information instantly across their entire fleet. When one ship found a weakness in our defenses, every other ship knew about it immediately. His voice cracked with emotion. I watched the destruction from my dying flagship. Ship after ship of our mighty armada being torn apart by opponents they should have been able to crush easily. The Valkyrie warbirds were outmaneuvered by vessels half their size. The Chromac mountain breakers were smashed by calculated asteroid impacts. The Zephyrian storm cruisers were torn apart by weapons that bent space itself. The general's voice rose to a shout, and through it all the humans kept talking, not shouting battle cries or making threats. They spoke like people doing a difficult job that needed to be done carefully. Target the shield generators first. Use gravitational lens on that battleship. Calculate trajectory for asteroid impact on cruiser formation. He spread his forearms wide in a gesture of complete defeat. They were destroying us with the same calm efficiency they would use to solve a mathematics problem. To them, our mighty armada was just a complex equation that needed the right solution. Xvara's voice dropped to a whisper. At 3 minutes and 47 seconds, Admiral Hyungwoo's voice came over the channels one last time. All hostile ships neutralized or in retreat, cease fire. Begin rescue operations for survivors. Just like that, the battle was over. The general looked up at the council with eyes full of broken pride. Out of 2,847 ships, only 29 survived. All of them were too damaged to fight. Most were barely able to maintain life support. The greatest military force in galactic history had been completely destroyed in less than 4 minutes. His voice became barely audible, and the humans immediately began trying to save the lives of the crews whose ships they had just destroyed. They sent rescue ships to help us. They offered medical aid to our wounded. They apologized again for having to fight at all. Xvara's 4 hands clenched into fists. They defeated us completely, and then they tried to heal our wounds. They destroyed our ships, and then they saved our lives. They won the most one-sided victory in galactic history, and then they offered us friendship. The council chamber was completely silent except for the general's heavy breathing. Finally, he spoke again. That was when I realized we had not just been defeated, we had been educated. The humans had given us a lesson in what real power looks like. And the most terrifying part was that they had barely tried. General Xvara stood quietly for a long moment, gathering his strength for the final part of his confession. The council members watched him with a mixture of horror and fascination. The rainbow lights from the 3 suns seemed dimmer now, as if the stars themselves were ashamed of what they had heard. The aftermath was worse than the battle itself, the general finally said. As my surviving ships limped away from their system, I tried to understand what had happened. My tactical computers were still working, barely. They had recorded everything. His voice was hollow, like an echo in an empty cave. I studied the recordings over and over during our long journey home. I analyzed every moment of the battle. I measured the humans' weapon power, their ship speeds, their coordination methods. What I learned made my defeat even more humiliating. Xvara began pacing slowly, his forearms hanging at his sides. The humans had not used their maximum capabilities. In the entire battle, I never saw their weapons firing at full power. Their ships never moved at top speed. They never used their most advanced tactics. They had defeated us while holding back. High Chancellor Vextari's feathers rustled with disbelief. Holding back? They destroyed nearly 3,000 ships. In 4 minutes, how could they have been holding back? The general's scales darkened further, because they were being careful not to cause unnecessary suffering. Every shot was calculated to disable our ships, not vaporize them completely. Every asteroid impact was aimed to destroy engines and weapons, not crew quarters. They were fighting to stop us, not to massacre us. He stopped pacing and looked directly at the council. Do you understand what this means? The most devastating military defeat in galactic history was delivered by an enemy that was actively trying not to kill us. They could have wiped out every ship and every crew member in those 4 minutes. Instead, they saved as many lives as possible while still winning completely. Counselor Thane's blue gas swirled frantically. But why? Why show mercy to invaders? Xvara's voice filled with something that might have been wonder. Because that is what they are. A species that has grown beyond the need for cruelty. They fight when they must, but they take no joy in destruction. They defend themselves completely, but they prefer to heal rather than harm. The general resumed his slow pacing. As our damaged ships retreated, human rescue vessels followed us. Not to attack again, but to help our wounded. They sent medical supplies. They offered to repair our ships enough to get us home safely. They gave us food and water for the long journey. His voice cracked with emotion. Captain Yuna herself came aboard my dying flagship. She brought human doctors to treat my injured crew. She looked at the damage to my ship and apologized again for having to fight us. She said she hoped someday our species could meet as friends instead of enemies. Vexvara stopped pacing and faced the council with tears in his alien eyes. I asked her how they had become so powerful, how they had learned to turn physics itself into a weapon, how ships barely 2 centuries old could defeat technology that had been refined for millennia. The general's voice became softer. She smiled and said something I will never forget. We learned that the universe is not our enemy. It is our partner. When you work with the laws of physics instead of against them, amazing things become possible. When you treat space as a friend instead of an obstacle, it helps you do things that seem impossible. He looked around the council chamber. But that was not the most devastating revelation. As Captain Yuna prepared to leave my ship, I asked her about their military. How many fleets did they have? How many ships? How many weapons? Vexvara's voice dropped to a whisper. She looked confused by my questions. Then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. Fleet? General, you were not fighting our military. Earth has no military fleets. Those were civilian vessels converted for defense. Scientists, explorers, researchers, and traders who volunteered to protect their home. The council chamber fell silent except for the humming of machinery. Several council members made sounds of shock and disbelief. Civilian ships? General Korath's voice rumbled like an avalanche. You were defeated by civilians? It gets worse, Vexvara said, his voice barely audible. As Captain Yuna was leaving, she paused at the airlock. She turned back to me with a sad smile. General Vexvara, we want you to know something important. Everything you witnessed today was our defense fleet. The ships you fought were designed to protect, not to attack. Our exploration vessels are faster, our research ships are more advanced, and our construction ships are larger, but none of them carry weapons. Because we learned long ago that the best way to avoid war is to make war unnecessary. The general's 4 hands began to shake. I asked her what she meant. How could they make war unnecessary? She explained that their species had discovered something no other civilization had achieved. They had learned to see conflict as a problem to be solved, not a contest to be won. His voice grew stronger as he continued. She said, "We defeated your fleet not because we are better warriors, but because we are better thinkers. We did not outfight you, we out-imagined you. We approached your invasion like scientists approaching a complex equation. We found the solution that would end the conflict with the least possible harm to everyone involved." Vexvara looked up at the council with eyes full of desperate understanding. Do you see what this means? We were not defeated by a military force. We were educated by a species that has evolved beyond the concept of traditional warfare. They fight like poets with imagination and creativity. They defend like mathematicians with precision and calculated efficiency. The general's voice rose to fill the crystal chamber. They do not see enemies, they see problems to solve. They do not seek conquest, they seek understanding. They have made war itself obsolete by becoming something greater than warriors. They have become artists of peace who can paint victory in any color they choose. He spread his 4 arms wide in a gesture of complete surrender. Captain Yuna's final words to me were the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. As she stepped through the airlock, she said, "General, we hope someday you will come back to our system. Not as invaders, but as friends. We would love to show you what we have been building instead of weapons. We think you would find it amazing." Vexvara's voice became barely a whisper. A species that can destroy the greatest fleet in galactic history wants to be our friends. They offer us partnership after we try to conquer them. They extend their hand in peace after demonstrating power beyond our understanding. The general looked around the council chamber one final time. Honored Council, we face a choice. We can continue to see the humans as enemies and prepare for a war we cannot win. Or we can accept their offer of friendship and learn from teachers who have mastered arts we never knew existed. His voice cracked with exhaustion and defeated pride. I recommend we choose friendship. Because if we choose war again, next time, they might not be so careful to save our lives while they destroy our ships. Vexvara straightened his shoulders and stood at attention. My report is complete. I await your judgment. The council chamber fell silent except for the distant humming of the three suns. The rainbow lights continued to dance across the crystal walls, but now they seemed to carry a different message. Not the cold light of judgment, but the warm glow of possibility. High Chancellor Vextari was the first to speak, her voice soft with wonder and fear. If what you say is true, then everything we thought we knew about power, about war, about the galaxy itself, is wrong. General Vexvara nodded slowly. Yes, honored Chancellor. The humans have shown us that there are ways of being strong that we never imagined. Ways of winning that leave everyone better than they were before. They have given us a gift more valuable than any conquest. His voice filled with something that might have been hope. They have given us a chance to become something greater than we ever thought possible. The question is, are we wise enough to accept it?